live here at Loanhead of Daviot for Recumbent Stone Circles. Just have a wee walk through since it's a lovely day. It's not like this usually in Aberdeen. It's although you look back at my videos, you'd maybe forgive yourself for thinking, oh, it's lovely in Aberdeen all the time. I just come out when it's nice. So one of the favourite circles of the group, very accessible. It's a managed site. It's looked after by Historic Environment Scotland. It's got its own car park. It's got a nice little walk up and a fenced area. What I might do later on is I might nip across the way and go to New Craig as well and do a live stream from there, since it's just 800 metres away. So, a couple of unusual things about Loanhead of Daviot is that it has, now I'm going to say either a split recumbent or a double recumbent, depending on which way you look at it. Now that I've had a wee look at it, I think it's pretty probable that it's a split. There's also been a bit of reconstruction. We'll go through what's been reconstructed and what's been re-erected. But some of the stone circles, some of the stone, circle stones, sorry, have been re-erected. Basically from where they had fallen. But the main part that's been reconstructed is this cairn base. So, yeah, it wasn't always like that. The original surveys back in 1901, 1902 by Cole pretty much found this area in the middle had roughly, I think the middle section maybe had like 5 or 6 groupings of stones in the middle, and then in between the circle stones there was maybe 3 or 4, a kind of large one here by the recumbent grouping of stones. Little mounds, basically, but nothing like this. This has been a reconstruction. And the reconstruction was the idea that it was fairly evident or fairly widely accepted now that the centre section of a recumbent stone circle housed a cairn. And what was left here was cairn stones. These are original ones that go to about here. And the same on the other side, round about there. And the top arc, the north arc, was missing of curb stones. Interestingly, it was these 4 stones that had fallen. So you'd maybe kind of think that north arc of the stone had been used for robbing or removing the cairn stones for stone dikes or houses or whatever. And maybe some time in the past. Cole also mentioned that when he surveyed, this area was very densely forested. It was a very dense plantation. But he also mentioned that the landowner had left a generous amount of open space round about the circle. Now, I've mentioned a couple of times at places like Old Keeg that heavily plantations areas with trees, particularly the circles have suffered, perhaps maybe with trees growing right next to them and being uprooted during a storm, pushing the stone out like a tooth, or as a tree has fallen during a storm, like the storms we had just a couple of years ago. There's some circle stones I went to, I was struggling to even find, they'd been covered in trees. So you maybe this damage on this flanker here had maybe been from this top section here had been repaired and put back on, had been damaged from a fallen tree or a felled tree. And who knows, the split might have been caused by that also. There's every possibility that a tree maybe have smacked the recumbent. It naturally split down a seam of quartz, and say the front had fallen forward or the back had fallen back, and they had been reconstructed before Cole had maybe even seen that. So let's have a walk round and we'll talk around about what kind of stones had been re-erected, what were found in original surveys. So as we normally start off with the recumbent setting, so we've got stone number 1, 2 and 3. So stone number 1, the kind of west flanker, it's a monster of a stone when you have a look at it. Sort of a kind of interface coming into the circle there, and you could maybe have forgiven it being a little bit damaged by this section here also. This bit's been re-erected with the mortar there. Quite a tall stone. I think it's coming around about, what's that, 2.3, 2.4 metres. But a monster of a stone. This section here was originally found, as far as we can, the documentation is still erect, still in its socket. It's this top section that had been broken off. So again, you could imagine that being smacked by a tree or a fallen, tree or a felled tree, and that section down here being broken off also during that time. The recumbent, I think we're talking about, let's just quickly paste this out, so it's maybe about 2.23 metres maybe. And flat faced, relatively speaking, pretty flat faced. Round about, if I stand next to it, so I'm about kind of head height, so it's maybe 1.5, 1.6 metres. And the kind of evidence that it's maybe a split would be, I would say, suggest this shape in here, or it's either shaped or been found like that. But the very fact that the recumbent comes from flat face at the back stone and curves round, and the front stone kind of takes that same curve profile, I would say would mean that it's a split. Other things is this ridge kind of in the middle, kind of maybe marries up with that ridge on this stone, like a kind of, that ridge would fit underneath there maybe. Let's go to the other side. Maybe this top ridge here married in with that ridge there. So yeah, I think there's a know that I'm a geologist or anything like that, but there's a strong bit of evidence. Again, this profile on this side would suggest that the back stone meets up with this angled front stone. So it looks to me like the stone had been split. And you can debate whether it's been a deliberate thing, whether it was being meant to be like that, whether it had been smacked by a tree. But it looks to me like it's been a one stone at one time and been split open. Cole actually found that he could, remember when he found this circle number 3 stone, the east flanker was fallen flat, so you could get right up into the gap, and he actually walked through it. The stones were further apart than they are just now, and he could walk right through the middle of it. So my guess from that would be that at some point before he surveyed it, this stone had gained some damage, split down a seam, and either side of it had been put back up by somebody. So that's the recumbent, and I'm not going to go into the central circle, although it's a reconstruction. It doesn't really bother me that much, but just to kind of have a quick look at this side of it. Again, you can, unusual, there's the flat face, but there's a kind of bulge sticking out here, which maybe suggests again a little bit of a damage at some point in the past. Stone number 3 then, the east flanker, which was originally found, it's a bit of a slab, isn't it? Quite thin. What's that? Maybe a metre and a half, a metre and 1.2 maybe wide. A slab of a stone, you can kind of see the grain of it down here. It had fallen from its socket back out here to this section of ground. So it had fallen down when it was found. which again, you might think, well, if this, say it was a catastrophic storm like we had a couple of years ago, which would possibly happen every 200 years, in a heavily forested area with trees growing on a cyclic, yearly way, you know, you can imagine a storm hitting that stone. It falls back at the same time. Maybe a couple of trees smack the other recumbent, the other flanker, and at the same time the recumbent gets damaged. Or it could be all three are separate instances of damage from fallen trees. And I say that because a fallen tree is a significant kinetic energy. So you can certainly see a lot of stone damage from something like that. So stone number 4 there walking around. This was found as it was, and it's a slabish stone. So flat face on the outside, a relatively flat face on the inside. Quite a block of a stone. Some evidence of a kind of, you know, square side here, flat stone, square side there, but you couldn't see it's rectangular or anything. But definitely what's that, sort of 1.8, 1.9 meters tall. A significant stone. And again, you might be thinking, what would normally be the case is, as the flankers or the tallest stones then graduate in height downwards to the back of the stone. So number 3 stone, the east flanker might have been a little bit taller than it was. Maybe it suffered some damage as it fell. Number 5 stone then. It's it's got some flat-faced features, but again, it looks like it's suffered some kind of damage. There's a bit odd angles round about it, but it pretty much has been the way it has been since documentation has been looking at this circle in particular. It's around about, if I stand next to it, it's around about up to my kind of eye level. So maybe kind of 1.5 meters kind of tall. Number 6 then was pretty much found. It's an interesting, like a kind of tombstone, kind of flat, solid flat faces on the outside and the inside. A slight lean to the stone. You can see the grain running through right down the sides. And again, this is maybe kind of coming up to my kind of chest height, so 1.4, 1.3 meters tall. So that's just coming round to, what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Stone 7. The stone 7 has been described as having a zigzag shape, which undoubtedly it has. When you look at it kind of profile, sort of zigzag like that. This stone was found fallen. So if that stone is original, then that might be the piece that fitted in this socket. That's just me surmising that. Of course, this stone could have been easily part of the reconstruction that took place here as part of the cairn. So this stone might have nothing to do with number 7. And it could have easily just been pulled back up, and it was deliberately been the shape it's been since it was created. So stone number 8 then, it was found fallen back outside the circle, from the circle, pointyish stone. Again, flat face on the inside, a bit kind of rough on the outside and the side, and both sides of it, but it's a block of a stone. It's pretty squarish, if you excuse the rough sides of it. Number 9, a kind of famous block kind of stone for this circle, maybe having some kind of alignments on it. Again, I think it was pretty much, although it's noted for a fallen stone, how could you determine if that stone's fallen? It's a cube. It's, you know, either way, it's pretty much still a cube. So I'm not entirely sure how they could have suggested it was a fallen stone or maybe a broken stone. I'm not entirely sure, but that's number 9. Number 10 had fallen, I think, towards the circle line. Again, starting to get taller. Evidence of kind of flat faces on the outside and the inside. And yeah, it's, you know, a reasonably thick stone, getting up to kind of maybe 1.8 meters, maybe kind of tall. And then number 11, there's been a little bit of repair done to this one with some mortar. Maybe kind of fills in here. And you can maybe imagine that, but if it's a managed site, and you want to maybe do a bit of a risk assessment to make sure nothing's going to damage or fall off or hurt anybody when they're walking around. So maybe imagine that's why it's been repaired. But again, a kind of block of a stone, not much in the way of really clear, evident flat surfaces. And that might have been due to maybe some damage it's had, just not falling over. It's somebody just taking it as a tree's maybe scalped it. The one thing I did omit to talk about was number 3 stones cup marks, because they're a wee bit unusual. Cup marks are usually just that. However, cup marks here are kind of long, and there's one there, quite unusual. And if this stone's been lying on its front for a while, then you can imagine maybe these were being done at that point, maybe if indeed they were created by the Picts. So yes, it's an interesting circle. Yeah, some reconstruction, but not a huge amount. The main reconstruction of this circle was the formation of the cairn. In fact, I think it was the centre court was all filled in, and then it was kind of made to look like represent a centre court in the last 50 years or something like that, maybe 60 years. The curb stone's original, the circle stone's original, the recumbent stone's original. The stones have essentially just been lifted back into place, into their sockets. They are originally in where they're supposed to be, just 4 of them on the outside arc there, and number 3 stone lifted back into its socket. So as far as the recumbent stone circle is concerned, the reconstruction of the stone circle was fairly light touch, just lifting them back into their sockets. The main part of the reconstruction was the visualization of this cairn in the middle, which never really existed as far as coal was concerned. But the general acceptance is that the recumbent stone circles all had a cairn that existed, and the reason that coal never saw it was because it had been heavily robbed for stone dikes and houses and such like that. So I hope you've enjoyed that little walk around of Loanhead of Daviot. It's a fantastic place to visit. I think it's up there with one of our great circles to kind of come and have a look at. Very accessible, just a few miles off the main road to Aberdeen, and like I say, car park and easy walk and easy access. So thanks very much for joining us for this little walk around.